Hey guys, it's Chris Fernandez from Used Combat Photography. I wanted to tell you about something I tried out recently that I thought you might find interesting. So, if you're going to do reenactment photography like I do, you need to have 35mm. Maybe. Now, the reason I say that is because Don McCullen, one of the greatest combat photographers in history, English guy, took some of the most iconic pictures from the Vietnam War, plus several others. He said that 35mm is the only format for combat photos. Dennis Fisher, who is a Marine Corps combat photographer in Vietnam, is a guy that I've been honored to have interviewed over the phone, communicated with him several times. In Vietnam, he carried a Nikon 35mm and a Nikonos, and he took some incredible photos. He, by the way, has a book coming out called Then All Hell Broke Loose, coming out next month, about his experience as a Marine Corps combat photographer. One time I took some pictures, some film photos that I thought were great, and I posted them on my Facebook page, and Dennis Fisher reached out to me to tell me he thought my picture sucked. So that was kind of soul crushing. But on the other hand, some of my reenactment photos, he's reached out and said, hey, you did a really good job on those photos. So yeah, that was awesome. But anyway, those two incredible photographers use 35mm, right, as did a lot of others. So I've been shooting with a speed graphic. I've been shooting with medium formats. I've tried a few cameras that are appropriate for World War II reenactment photography. And I've really been struggling to find the perfect camera. So I tried first this Contax 3. This is similar to the Contax 2 that Robert Capa used on D-Day. This has a light meter that his didn't have. Contax 2 was just flat on top. Robert Capa took some incredible photos with his Contaxes. Unfortunately, he was also a raging liar fraud, but he did take some awesome photos, and he was there at D-Day. But what I found with this is that because it's so old, sometimes the gear slips in here. It stops feeding the film, or stops taking up the film on this side, but it keeps feeding it on the other side, and so the film just starts getting crushed up inside the film chamber. So anyway, not perfectly sold on using this for combat reenactment photos. I also tried an Argus C3. The C3, I made a video about it. The C3, I think this is a fantastic camera. It takes incredible photos, but it is kind of fiddly to use under stress. So when you are going to take a picture with this, you take the picture, okay, let's say you're trying to take a series of photos. You take a picture, then you have to hit a release up here, then advance your film, then cock your shutter separately over here, then you can take your next picture. So it's kind of easy to screw that up in combat, also in fake combat. I also found that the film counters on these are completely, you can't trust it at all, at least in my experience. Maybe it was just the one I was using. I also tried this kind of World War II-ish Exacta VX. And what I found with this is it takes pretty cool pictures, or at least it could. I was using the speed finder up here, and what I found out, I thought I was lining up correctly with the speed finder to take pictures, and it turns out that for whatever reason, whether it was me or the camera, I don't know, all the pictures I was angled slightly upward. So even cropping these 35mm negatives to try to get, recompose the image, I only got a couple of good shots out of shooting a roll on this. So there's a camera that I've been wanting, because of course every great photographer wants one of these cameras, and that is a Leica. And I finally recently got myself a Leica 3A. Okay, not in bad shape, a little beat up. The leather skin is broken down here and cracked, peeling, stuff like that. Whatever, I don't care about the cosmetic stuff. Functionally, okay, and I went and checked it out from the seller. She was a great lady. She let me check it out. I made sure that the shutter was functioning, even though the shutter speeds were not exactly perfect. And actually, most of the time, it seems like it's shooting at one speed. But she let me buy it on payment. She even let me take it and use it for reenactment, or take it and run a roll through it before I had finished paying for it. Sold me an awesome case, like a custom built Leica case for, extra lenses and accessories. Now I got to spend a bunch of money buying cool stuff to fill that. I took this, I had a work trip to Dallas a couple of months ago. I took this and I put a roll through it, and what I found out was the pictures aren't all that good. So it came with a Sumar 50mm lens, which, as I have found out, these just do not age well. They have some issues, they deteriorate. So it just didn't take great photos. But in September, I wound up shooting a reenactment, and I got some awesome 35mm shots. So the Leica worked all right, right? No. Fortunately, before I bought this from the same seller, I had bought this. This is a Russian Fed, I believe it's a 1G. It is a 1950s copy. This one, I believe, was made in 54, 55, right at the end of the production run. A copy of the Leica 2 from the 1930s. So the Russians, Russian quality control is all over the place, just like with their Kiev cameras. Some of them are great, some of them completely suck. And just feeling these things, when you pick up the actual Leica, it is just like solid, and it obviously beautifully machined, and it doesn't make any noise when you move it. It doesn't rattle. So this feels like this was designed and built by like some super uptight German engineer who probably had a miserable marriage because all he thought about was making cameras. And like, he poured everything into making this exactly perfect. This, on the other hand, it feels more flimsy. It makes noise when you shake it. This feels like it was designed and built by like all the guys I knew in the military who tested positive for drugs and got kicked out. So it just doesn't feel as good. It doesn't have quite the same features. There's a couple of little differences design wise, but essentially it's the same camera that operates the same way. Now, I am not going to go through all the details on operation on this. There are Leica fanatics, absolute devotees, and this is like the Harley of the camera world. And there are plenty of people who know these cameras way better than I do, and they will do a much better job of explaining how you operate them, okay, and all the things you need to know. So the basics, I would say, just real quick, the basics, they are a pain in the ass to put film into, because the back doesn't open up, just the bottom comes off, and then you've got this film take-up spool, and you have to put the lead from the 35mm roll in here, fit this in here, and it's just a pain in the ass. There's some people who say that you need to make a special jig to cut the film so that it'll feed properly, and that's not true. All that you really need is a card that you stick in the back. Anyway, if you look up any videos about loading a Leica, you'll see what the problem is and why it's so difficult, and why people have all these special techniques to do it. Anyway, it's not impossible to do. It's just a pain in the ass. Another thing you need to know about this is you do not set the shutter speed until after you have cocked the shutter. So here's your shutter speed dial right here. You cock the shutter, then say, okay, I'm on 100. I want to shoot at 125th, and then you take a picture. Okay, it's really nothing crazy about it, right? You've got a rangefinder window, you've got a rangefinder window and a composing window. They're both tiny. They're, the rangefinder window on this one is actually pretty clear, but they have their challenges for trying to compose and stuff. Anyway, please, if you're interested in getting one of these, look at all of the experts, everything all the experts have written and said about these. You can learn a whole bunch. You're not going to learn it from me. I'm just talking about using it, right? Well, what I found out was when September 6th, anyway, I took this and my 1945 speed graphic that I fairly recently acquired, which is another cool story of how I got that camera. I'll make a different video about that. But I took this with me as a backup, and we were doing a reenactment about the Battle of Bougainville at the National Museum of the Pacific War in Fredericksburg, Texas. And what we do, almost every time we do these reenactments, we have two iterations. We do one in the morning, one in the afternoon. The one in the morning, it was nice, bright, sunny. I had my speed graphic in my hand. I had this hanging around my neck, and the reenactment actually ended very quickly. It just went a lot faster, and I wound up only taking pictures with the speed graphic, and I got some pretty decent pictures. So the second iteration, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to have a speed graphic, but I'm going to try to focus a little more on getting these. Then it started raining, and we were hoping that it was going to stop raining, but it didn't. So in between the iterations, as it's raining, I took a couple of just, snapshots of the guys looking like they're out in the jungle somewhere. And those actually turned out pretty cool. Then when the reenactment came, time for the reenactment came, I went out onto the battlefield. I had this ever-ready case. This is a Leica case, which of course fits this. And initially, my plan had been, okay, I'm going to have this camera hanging around my neck. I'm going to preset the focus using hyperfocal distance focusing, setting the focus distance at 30 feet and shutter at f16, which would give me, put everything in focus from about 15 feet to 800, something like that. Okay, and then I would use this light's speed finder, and all I would have to do is compose through here, get a quick reference, take the picture, advance the film, cock the shutter, bam, next picture, bam, next picture. Very quick, very easy, right? Couple of issues. Because it was raining, it was very overcast and dark. I was shooting on 400 speed film, which I never trust a box speed on film. I always cut it by around half, so I was rating it at 200. So now I'm all the way down shooting at a 50th of a second, based on the available light. Also, because it was raining and I was worried, well, I might have to close the case. If it really is raining bad, or if I feel like, man, this camera's going to get damaged, I'm going to get water in the film chamber. Even with the lens extended, because just real quick, these lenses collapse for storage, and then you have to pull it out to get it to work. And even with the lens extended, I can still pull this over and pretty much protect it from the rain. But with this on here, I can't. Okay, I couldn't do it. So I said, all right, for this iteration in the rain, I'm going to take this off. I'm just going to have to set the hyperfocal distance focusing and just use this little tiny window back here to real quick compose my images and take pictures. So then we get started. I'm behind all these guys playing infantry who are coming in onto the battlefield as reinforcements behind a Stuart light tank. And as everyone goes in, I mean, it's a really kind of dramatic scene, and there's all the gunfire and the smoke and explosion and stuff, and the tanks coming in, and the infantry are, advancing in, hunched down, and they start engaging the enemy, and I start taking pictures. Well, the very first time I raised this up to take a picture, came up to look through the viewfinder and realized, oh crap, it's all wet. I have water in the front, water in the back. It's completely blurred. I can't really see anything through the viewfinder, so I'm having to just look over the top of the camera, eyeball it. A couple of times I tried wiping the water off when I come here and try and shoot. Nope, I still can't see, so I'm just either pointing blind or looking over the top. And so I ran through this roll of film. As soon as the event ended, I got out of the water, pulled out something that was semi-dry, tried to wipe the water off. And I'm worried that, man, there's water got inside. I might have ruined the film. Don't know. Okay. Eventually that day I get back home. I pull the film out of it. I develop it and realize, dang, like these pictures came out pretty cool. So here I'm going to show you, run through several of the pictures that I took. I would say, partly because I have figured out the battlefield at the museum, so I know which directions you can shoot from to get good pictures. Part of it was me composing the images, being in the right spot. Part of it was also just the camera with this very old, this is a Fed f3.5 50mm lens. It's just a pretty cool lens, and because I was shooting slow in the dark, I got the motion blur. You see on this one picture, I've done a couple of reenactments in the rain, and what I've learned is if it's dark, if it's rainy, you can see the muzzle blast, and I've been trying to capture the muzzle blast, and in this reenactment I captured muzzle blast once, but somebody happened to step right in front of the soldier right as he was firing, so you can barely see it on the other side of the soldier's head. So yeah, that was frustrating, but still, I think I got some pretty cool pictures. The camera was like lightning fast to use. If I was out there in if it hadn't been raining, I would have been shooting, you know, if it hadn't been raining and it hadn't been so dark, I would have been shooting a lot faster. I would have been composing faster using this. I wouldn't have been struggling, and the pictures probably would have been even better. So essentially, right now, this is going to be my primary 35mm for reenacting. Eventually, I will spend the money to get this serviced and you know, making sure the shutter speeds are correct. I will probably pull this lens off and use this one, or get an actual good Leica lens, screw mount lens for it, and this will be my primary, because I would really rather have an authentic camera from that time. This was built, I believe, in 1935. But for right now, this cheap little Fed camera that I paid $100 for, it's pretty freaking cool. And everything that goes on the Leica, I can use on this, I think. It takes good enough pictures. It is light. It is easy to handle. It's very fast to use. I understand exactly from this and that. I understand why people loved Leica so much. They were so much easier to use and just better than so many other cameras. So if you're thinking about getting a Leica, but you don't want to spend the money, hey man, you get a good Fed camera. I think it's probably a smart thing, and you can get some really good pictures out of it. So if anyone has any questions, please hit me up, and you guys go out there and take some cool pictures. So until next time, Chris Fernandez from Hughes Combat Photography. Take care.